Farmers say this is the worst dry spell in more than 25 years. Paddocks, which are normally green and lush, are just little more than dust bowls.
Well, the feed we have is virtually useless. It's only roughage and, very low in protein.
Dungog beef producer Stan Dorahy spends his time mixing special protein supplements to keep his cattle alive. Down the road, dairy farmer Rex Myhill is forking out $800 a week on hay and grain.
My son and I work the property, and it means that one of us have to go because we'll have to spend one wage on stock food.
About 40% of New South Wales is drought declared, from Casino in the north, west to the border and south to Cooma. The Hunter is rated the driest area in the state. The Williams River north of Dungog has stopped running. This area of stones is normally covered by a metre of water. It hasn't rained here for more than 7 months. Even if it rained here tomorrow, farmers would not be out of trouble. The soil temperature is now too cold for the growth of summer grasses, and winter pastures are still months away.
If it rains now, we're not going to get food till August in any great quantity, so yeah, it's pretty grim. Well, I think it's the hardest winter that people in this lower Hunter area have had to face for many, many years. A lot of people are talking about it as being as bad as the 65 drought.
It's estimated 30,000 head of cattle have been trucked out of the lower Hunter, either sold at markets or moved to greener pastures in the north. Farmers are receiving some compensation for trucking costs, but it's estimated the drought could see up to 20% of producers going broke. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Julie Loxley is living every mother's nightmare. Her daughter is a heroin addict.
She's 23 and looks 33.
3 years ago, Julie's daughter sought help from this private methadone clinic at Long Jetty. She's still coming here. Methadone is supposed to be used as a substitute for heroin, but according to Julie Loxley, her daughter has used heroin while on the methadone program. Mrs. Loxley wants the clinic closed.
If it was going to make her better, shouldn't she be well by now? 3.5 years later, she should be very well.
Dr. Ogers runs the Long Jetty methadone program. While he wouldn't comment specifically about the Loxley case, he insists the clinic's record should not be judged by one case alone.
It depends how you regard success. If you say success is stopping using heroin, I would say our figure is around about 70 to 80% completely stop. If we talk about getting our lifestyle back together, the figure is about the same. 70 to 80% would do that. As getting off methadone, we appear to have been getting about 10% per year of our clients stopping using methadone and remaining up to 3 or 4 months later off all drugs.
Others who have been on the program say it saved their lives. This woman says she hasn't used heroin or methadone for a year.
I was just about to go into prostitution and I'd rung up to get how much I'd earned to support my habit. Fortunately, the clinic opened that week and I don't know whether I'd be able to be here today to be able to talk about it if that clinic hadn't have been there when I needed it.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
In the pre-dawn, 300 diggers marched to Civic Park. They had come to pay their respects and remember the fallen. Some hours later, the traditional march led by regular members of the Army, Navy and Air Force. For the first time, women headed the returned service section, 30 WAF officers proudly leading a contingent of 1,500 veterans through city streets to Civic Park. Angry RSL officials slammed a comment by the Reverend Sir Alan Walker during the week that Anzac Day should be stopped as it was glorifying battle.
That's a load of rubbish. If you've been to a war and seen people killed and blown to pieces, you never want to see that again. You don't want wars.
Wreaths were laid in remembrance of the men and women who gave their lives fighting for Australia, including 9,000 who died on the beaches at Gallipoli.
Australians felt enormously proud of these soldiers, as they do of all those who have fought and given their lives for this country.
5 reserve defence personnel collapsed in the heat. Newcastle's oldest Gallipoli veteran, 101-year-old George Todd, looked on. Sadly, there are only 5 of his comrades left in the area. Wearied by time, other World War I and II veterans took pride of place on their special day of the year. The Newcastle service was just one of many that were held throughout the area. Now to Bruce Mackenzie on the Central Coast.
In Muswellbrook, the significance of the light horsemen during this century's wars was brought to the fore, with 16 returned servicemen leading the parade through the town. Over the last 100 years, many of Australia's light horsemen have come from the Muswellbrook and Scone area, so it was a fitting tribute that the 12th, 16th and 24th Brigades led the march. Returned servicemen from World War II and Vietnam marched proudly alongside of Air Force and Army contingents. Around 4,000 people lined the streets to cheer the veterans, the biggest crowd ever seen in Muswellbrook on Anzac Day. So significant are the light horsemen that on Sunday the 12th and 16th Hunter River Lancers will be given the freedom to the city.
The freedom of the city for the 12th, 16th was coming on Sunday, so Muswellbrook Shire said, well, would you like to ride here? And we were delighted and they were delighted.
At the cenotaph, wreaths were laid and prayers said. General Brigadier David Carter of Sydney's Victoria Barracks praised the character of the Anzacs.
In other words, they took the best of the Australian character and they forged it into that unique combination, which is the mark of the best things in Australian society and is the hallmark of the Australian soldier.
In Singleton, the Anzac Day tradition was upheld, with returned servicemen and women joining soldiers from the local army base in the now familiar parade. Young boys marched alongside their fathers and grandfathers, and on all sides of the street, men, women and children showed their support. A similar scene was found in Toronto. Jane Anderson takes up the story.
"70 riders are competing in 3 sections. Each has spent months training and building a trust with their mounts, which must carry them through dressage, cross-country and show jumping throughout the weekend. Riders were pressed to conform to the strict disciplines of dressage, with their horses twitchy in today's strong wind. The judges were travelling in style, while the spectators were rugged up against the chilly blast. Local school children were invited to tread the cross-country course, taking great interest in the infamous water jump. This is one of the last events for competitors to press for a place in the 1992 Barcelona team. Dungog's Melinda Morris is a rising star in the saddle.
A good performance here would open the doors to further Olympic selection, Australian representation, because this is going to be one of the highest standards of events held in Australia.
Many of Australia's best riders have often had to sell their horses just to stay on the circuit. These same horses have been ridden to gold by riders from other nations. With a cash prize of $30,000 from this event, it's hoped Australia's winning teams won't be broken up.
It'll give the Australians every bit of the chance that they really deserve and really are capable of winning in the international arena.
Police were called to this address on Luskin Way at about 3 o'clock yesterday morning, where they found the body of a young woman slumped in a bedroom. The victim, 24-year-old mother of 4, Lana Walsh, had suffered numerous stab wounds to the face and chest. Police took a large hunting knife from the backyard, which they believe was the murder weapon. They immediately launched a hunt for a 27-year-old man who they think can assist them with inquiries. Today they took out a warrant for his arrest on charges of murder. It's understood Peter Paul Dundas was an acquaintance of the murdered woman and lived at the same address. He's about 175 centimetres tall and has numerous tattoos on both arms. Despite an intensive search, police now believe Dundas may have left the area.
Well, he has relatives and friends in the Taree and Kempsey areas, and at this stage we're concentrating inquiries up in those areas.
Dundas has a history of violence and police have stressed he should not be approached.
I believe he can be considered dangerous at this stage, and I'm asking that any members of the public that do sight him to please don't go near him and contact their nearest police station immediately.
Residents met on the former Adamstown Heights Infant School grounds in a bid to stop the sell-off. It's believed a church group has been offered the site for $300,000. The residents say the building and grounds are worth at least twice that. The school has been vacant since the end of last year. The 40 students transferred to portable classrooms at Adamstown Primary. Residents voted on a motion that the school should return to public property. Privately, some admitted they may be acting too late. Lake Macquarie's Mayor Ivan Welsh said he was hopeful council could put a last-minute counter bid to buy the property. A giant coal liner was an appropriate backdrop for the celebration as the convict's 6-metre cutter sailed into Glenrock Lagoon. It was here they first sighted seams of coal. Mary and William Bryant, with their 2 children and 7 crew, were on the run from authorities. 200 years on, they came through the mists of time to mark a major event in Australia's history.
We are the spirits of the past, linking the great journeys of the Dreamtime to the great discoveries of your modern age.
A monument was unveiled at the Glenrock Scout Camp, the New South Wales Coal Association noting the contribution of William and Mary Bryant, beginning Australia's greatest export industry and establishing the very reason for the city of Newcastle. "18-year-old Billie Jean Kirk and 30-year-old Andrew Malone, his hair dyed blonde, appeared in a Hobart court this morning. The couple were arrested after their photographs appeared on Tasmanian television last night. Homicide detectives from Newcastle have flown to Hobart. It's expected Kirk and Malone will be extradited to New South Wales on Monday to face charges over the murder of 28-year-old Dominic Manson. Manson's body was found by fishermen off Poolbar Island on Lake Macquarie last month. It had been weighted down with house bricks. And in an unrelated investigation, a Belmont North man has been remanded in custody, charged with the stabbing murder of a Newcastle woman earlier this week. 26-year-old Peter Dundas was arrested last night at Nabiac. He will appear in Newcastle local court on Monday. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Adelaide got away to a brilliant start with Mike Mackay and Mark Davis doing the damage. The Falcons ran into foul trouble right from the opening minutes with Kruger and Turner racking up plenty. Mart Bradke extended Adelaide's lead. But Michael Johnson started to find the range in dramatic fashion. And the big men were making heavy weather of it under the basket. Ahead by 14 at half-time, Pearce and Cubank kept the roll going. The 36ers' defence was on top of the Falcons' smaller brigade. Back came the Falcons, however, Johnson from a long way out. And James Bullock cut the lead to 2 with great play. But Darryl Pearce steady with a three-pointer, and Hayes and Braggy combined to make sure of the win. After the match, Ken Cole was merciless in his attack on the men in charge of the match.
I think anybody watching the game would be fairly appalled by some of the stuff that went on. So, you know, you've got to stand up for your players, and you see something as unfair as that, I think you've got to do something officially about it and ask that referee not be allowed to officiate a home team again.
And then hinted at retirement from coaching.
This is probably my last game over here, and they've been fabulous over the years, and I really do appreciate it, and I'd like them to know that. So thanks to you and everybody.
Okay.
Based in Armidale, Tamworth and Muswellbrook, the 12th and 16th Hunter River Lancers are regiments enshrined in Australian military history. Now more than 100 years old, their heritage dates back to the Boer War and the formation of the Australian Light Horse. They led the last great cavalry charge of modern warfare against Turkish guns at Beersheba in 1917. The thunder of their hooves has been replaced by the clatter of armoured personnel carriers. War veterans stood too with serving personnel to be granted freedom of the Shire.
Have resolved in appreciation of your great service to our Shire to confer upon such regiment by this deed and in perpetuity the privilege, honour and distinction of the freedom of entry to the Shire.
To put it to the test, the Lancers drew swords and fixed bayonets for a parade into town. There they were met by crowds lining the streets and a deputation of the local constabulary. On presenting their scroll, the Lancers were allowed past, adding yet another chapter to their distinguished association with the Shire. Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News. "24 stations answered the call, each fielding a team of 5 to take part in the contest. It's a build-up to the Fire Brigade Olympics to be held in Wollongong next year. They came from as far afield as Nowra, Condobolin and Grafton, each to beat the clock in the hope of taking home a trophy. The teams were put through a number of drills, none more testing than this one. From a standing start, they were to connect their hoses to the pumper, each team member assigned a vital part of the operation. Even as one sprinted to unravel the hose, another was opening a tap to set the water flowing. It took nimble fingers to thread a nozzle and direct it toward an electronic target before the water pressure gushed forward. The competition serves a dual role of training and bringing the firefighters together socially.
Well, the opportunity is there for the volunteers to increase their expertise in firefighting skills, experience, efficiency, certainly on the use of equipment.
Mainly the comradeship and competing against other teams, and the weekend away with the family. You've got to have your family behind you, otherwise you haven't got a hope.
In the mop-up of today's contest, Muswellbrook came out ahead of local stations, while Port Macquarie topped the visitors' point score. Light breezes and clear skies were a welcome change for competitors and spectators who'd been whipped by the elements for the past 2 days. They were treated to vintage cars and some vintage show jumping in centre ring. The high-performance competition showed on the ranks. More than half of the advanced level entrants had retired. One prize thoroughbred, Sirocco Duke, collapsed and died with a burst blood vessel after yesterday's 20-kilometre speed and endurance test. Such casualties are rare. Horses have medical checks throughout the competition. Dungog's Melinda Morris had led the novice section until a disappointing show jump round put her in 8th place. Charlotte Hiles on Copper Clismic took the applause and the winner's cheque of $5,000. Queensland's Katrina Smith rode Pompey Chimes to victory in the junior novice section. Local Olympian Heath Ryan on Allendale Lodge Bush Telegraph entered the show jumping round on a narrow lead. A clean performance ensured his win and a $10,000 prize. In only 2 years, it's already billed as the richest three-day event in Australia. For the competitors, it can be a stepping stone for Olympic selection and a shot at a purse that can keep them in the competitive saddle.
Last year it was our enthusiasm. This year there's lots and lots of people recognising the event as being something which is spectacular and also something that's becoming world class. And probably for me, the most exciting thing is that it is an event that's contributing towards putting the Australian rider into the international arena, and that became very evident this year, and the riders were unanimous in agreeing with that.
Australian riders are seen as the unpolished jewels of the international circuit. The combination of their courage, superior breeding of their horses, and now the experience gained from events such as this is all helping to shape their competitiveness.
It's got a long way to go to be up in the top international events in the world, but the facilities are here. They've got the organisation that's growing all the time. The community's getting behind it, and there's a tremendous amount of work required.
For the horses and riders, the equestriate is similar to a triathlon in athletics. There's the deceptively dainty discipline of dressage and the pressure of a faultless performance in show jumping. But the toughest test is the speed and endurance in cross-country. Seasoned competitor and 1992 Barcelona Olympics team member Heath Ryan of Lochinvar saw a second-day lead dashed when he was thrown from his first mount. However, he picked himself up to ride again, this time on Bush Telegraph.
Basically, my confidence remained intact, and that's what the sport revolves around. And you never do know when you're going to have a fall that actually shakes you up, and I was just very lucky.
Nearly half of the advanced level entrants retired before completing the tough course. Despite periodic medical checks, the leading thoroughbred Sirocco Duke collapsed and died with a burst blood vessel of the heart. A local front-runner in the novice section, Dungog's Melinda Morris on tribal law, dropped her lead after clipping 6 rails in the show jumping. Charlotte Hiles on Copper Clismic won the applause and $5,000 in prize money. Queenslander Katrina Smith riding Pompey Chimes won the junior novice section, and Heath Ryan aboard Allendale Lodge's Bush Telegraph won the advanced and $10,000. However, there was no rest for Heath today. He set out on a new campaign, linking up with the Australian team on its way to New Zealand to contest the Trans-Tasman Trophy, currently held by the world champion New Zealand team.
In the ongoing war against drugs, it's often forgotten that alcohol is our second largest substance abuse problem. The Hunter Area Health Service has taken an important step to try to combat it. The service has built a detox unit which offers people short-term care while they dry out.
If people have a problem and they want to do something about it, stopping drinking is the first step, and if you're unable to do that, maybe you need to come to the detox.
Mrs. Chadwick unveiled a plaque to mark the official opening of the unit.
When one thinks of drugs, all too often we think of things such as heroin and cocaine and the like, not realising the enormous cost to the Australian community of alcohol abuse.
Earlier today, the Minister announced that a grant of $1.6 million will be spent upgrading facilities at Maitland High School.
That relates particularly to the industrial arts section, which will be significantly upgraded, and having seen it today, it is badly in need of that upgrading.
The renovation should be finished by next year. Jane Anderson, NBN News.